hard sell where the stick in the swill-bucket rattles back. Well, it's World Cup time again, and for a change, no one's truly excited, with the possible exception of Gianni Infantino. I say for a change, no one was particularly excited for the last one either, to be honest, taking place as it did at Christmas in a fundamentalist theocracy that stones homosexuals to death and doesn't even have lager. Barbican doesn't count. This one's taking place at the regular time of year in a country that does allow beer, but the middle bit is still true. Alright, they haven't got to the point where stoning homosexuals to death is on the books, but against that they have a proud tradition of extrajudicial killing, which saves time, and which many of them are explicitly happy to go back to any time you're ready. Whimsy aside, this World Cup really is going to be a hot mess at best, with approximately 8 billion games between 7 million teams over 9 centuries in blazing, life-threatening heat, mostly hosted by a fascist nation literally patrolled by stormtroopers, and actively at war with at least one of the countries taking part. A little bit of politics, yes indeedy. Cry if you must, but do understand that everything I just said is factually accurate. Except the numbers might have been slightly exaggerated. But let's not be depressed and depressing about it, so no one's really looking forward to this World Cup. It's still happening, and it should at least include some interesting games of association football. And it's an easy excuse for an episode. So, in blithe disregard of the fact that I did one of these just a month ago, here's a Happiness in Magazines episode. Today we've got another TV Times, from the thick of Italia 90 and with an appropriate cover. By some definitions of the word anyway. It references the fact that Sweden and Scotland have been drawn together in Group C and were due to play each other that week in a game shown on, BBC One actually, but Good Morning Britain just happened to have a Scottish presenter and a Swedish weather girl. So let's do this thing. I've seen worse excuses for articles, in TV Times even. Scotland won, incidentally 2-1, but unfortunately the silly sods had already lost to Costa Rica in week 1, and that did for their chances of getting out of the group, given that the other team was Brazil. Still did it better than Sweden, who to some surprise finished bottom with 3 defeats out of 3. Sorry, Ulrika. Anyway, the adverts. Do any of them have anything to do with football? Not really, but here they are anyway. We start with the obligatory cigarette ad, and it's Benson and Hedges, one of the less opaque ones from the whole semi-surrealist hiding the pack campaign. This one's not exactly Martin Hanford's level. Still, notice the subliminal theme of cool, fresh air. It might be an accident, but if it is, it's a happy one. And let's face it, it isn't. A couple of pages later, it's basic fashions all the way, with the still missed C&A. Not Manat, however, but Canda. See what they did there? Canda. Which was their formal wear range, even if it's being presented as actually pretty casual here. Polo shirts and shorts under the formal wear banner. Whatever, it's all C&A anyway. Apparently the summer 1990 look in the squash-playing yuppie set was the flag of the United Arab Emirates minus the red. Either that or a pacer. At least British Racing Green is in. That's a good colour. And all for 11 quid, plus a tenner for the shorts. Mind you, that comes to over 50 quid today. Over the page, some chemists. But not Boots. Vantage chemists. Boots pretty much monopolised the high street pharmacy market, but they weren't and aren't the only game in town. There's Day Lewis, Lloyd's, some but not all Superdrugs, and this one, Vantage, which I was surprised to discover still exists, albeit mostly online. I still have a few physical outlets, but none within 100 miles of me, hence never having heard of them. There used to be even more chemist chains, mostly family-run single-town affairs, but as supermarkets got bigger in the 80s, they started adding things other than groceries, like clothes, home entertainment, and of course, their own pharmacies. And the extra convenience of getting your being alive medicines at the same place and time as your milk and eggs killed off a lot of these smaller chemist shops. But as I said, Vantage still actually exists. Or at least the name does. Whether the original company behind it has survived, I don't know. And at this point you may have noticed I didn't say much about the advert. That's because there isn't really very much to say. The copy's pretty boilerplate. If you asked ChatGPT to write a copy for a pharmacy advert, it would probably look like this. It even outright rips off Yellow Pages in its second paragraph. The only thing is the image of the kid impersonating his dad shaving, and there's no call to get all Freudian about it. Next, holiday ideas for the immensely rich. No, richer than that. I'm talking about a P&O world cruise. 90 days circumnavigating the globe on the legendary SS Canberra, refitted from its time as a trusty, somewhat rusty troopship in the Falklands War. Taking in San Francisco, Sydney, the Seychelles, Honolulu, Singapore, Fiji and Rhyl, except for Rhyl, and not in that order. For only $5,000. Bear in mind again, this is 1990, so for $5,000, read $12,500 in today's money. And another couple of hundred on top of that. So obviously this advert is irrelevant to anyone to whom such a sum could not conceivably be preceded with the word only. Which is almost everyone, really. And frankly, once deregulation comes in a few months' time, and people aren't forced to buy the TV Times for their ITV listings, this advert, should it have appeared then, would be essentially speaking to no one. Still, it's a nice aesthetic. A classic vintage travel poster look, with the bold fonts and inviting colours, and ostentatious use of the full unabbreviated company name. Not that it means anything anymore. Couple of pages later, sport. Finally. Doesn't mention the World Cup, but the timing still won't be a coincidence. This, you'll notice, is one of the rare collaborative adverts, like those washing machine ads that also promote a washing powder, or vice versa. Slazenger, the sporting goods company mostly known for summer sports such as tennis, they're all over Wimbledon, cricket and golf, also dabbled in toiletries from time to time, although not with the greatest success. Which was clearly also true in 1990, because here they are giving the stuff away with bowls of Kellogg's Start, the crunchy malted honey thing with the sporty image. Speed lines on the logo, Steve Cram in the adverts, grid pattern tablecloth resembling the tiled walls of a gym changing room, so forth. They're even giving you one of the tokens right now for nothing, except the price of the TV Times, I suppose. That's how non-desperate they are to get you to try their product. It's that easy. How could you refuse? How? How could you refuse? How dare you refuse? After all we did for you, we made the 1966 World Cup ball, you know. Jeff Hurst wouldn't have got his hat-trick with thin air. You owe us. You owe us. You. And over the page, one of the more regretted corporate decisions of 1990. I know it was called Snickers everywhere else in the world, so it made sense to change it from a global marketing perspective. That was even the angle they took into television advertising.
Snickers, how you say, Snickers bar.
Bar, cafe. There's one down the road. Now, you go out here, you take a right and...
In the spirit of international understanding, Marathon has changed its name to Snickers.
But Snickers is still a stupid name, and Marathon was much better. They hardly need saying why. It's aesthetically superior, and it's a real sodding word, and an impressive one at that. But there you are, the world knew it as Snickers, and Britain had to fall in line. And now, some tat. Look at that, downright archetypal, with the chintz and the sunbeam and a completely gratuitous kitten. I could never figure out what these were for. No, actually it was who they were for. No, it wasn't even that. It was why the people these were for wanted them. This is by the latterly unfortunately named Sandra Cuck, 5-time Artist of the Year. I know that because the advert says it, twice. Doesn't say who gave her this award or what it actually is. But she's also described as being inspired by the Dutch master, so there's that. This is part of her The Barefoot Girls series, incidentally, just in case it and the copy weren't already giving off the kind of vibes that lead one to suspect that it might be hanging in the dining halls on Epstein Island. Only 20 quid plus postage and packing. Moving back to the real world, here's a rather more unhappy child. It's grazed its knee and it needs mummy to kiss it better. Unfortunately, her duty of care also means she has to make it much worse first by applying Germaline directly to the wound. Germaline, an anaesthetic and antiseptic, is effective, but it also bloody hurts for the first 10 to 30 seconds after application. And, as I'm sure we all remember, to a small child that's at least 6 hours. And it's meant to be an anaesthetic. It's a liar. So yes, plenty of kids resented it deeply, even though it did them good. Which is at least 40% of childhood right there. This advert is playing defence with the soft focus and the backlighting and the overall soothing atmosphere, but let the record show the stuff is downright exacerbating before it gets around to being soothing, which is just not something you could possibly sell to a child. Fortunately, they don't get a say. In the middle of the magazine, tasty, crunchy veg. Very carefully arranged and lit, splashed with water and shot so it glistens on their clean skin, so it looks fresh and, well, clean. There's a reason they call it food porn. And all this is for Asda. The old northern supermarket was really struggling at this point, flailing for an identity that would make people actually shop there. Their most recent gambit had been hiring comedy stars to push trolleys around on location to symbolise the lengths Asda went to find their ingredients.
So anyway, she said to me, and this is strictly between you and me, and not a word to anybody else, mind.
Asda do a fab double Gloucester, you know.
I know, only I thought I should...
Sorry, you're trying to say something?
Well, yes, you see, do you like country and western?
Is Demis Roussos country and western? Not really. No, then I don't. So anyway, she said to me that he would have won first prize if he hadn't dropped his tomatoes.
When you've the whole world to choose from at Asda, you'd be off your trolley to go anywhere else.
They were good adverts. They won awards, they were genuinely entertaining. But they did piss all for the company's profit margins. So now they're going for some kind of vaguely classy and upmarket image, with the impressive veg and Baskervillian serifs, and a recipe instead of copy. All somewhat undermined by the punning slogan, and to an extent the gaudiness of the logo. The colours in the counters were added during a particularly desperate flail, and didn't last very much longer. Over the page, more tan. Basically Tesco value Fabergé eggs. Collect them all, it's not like you've got anything else going on in your life. 35 quid each, free display rack, what the hell is your money? The next advert actually interrupts the listings. It's that salad time of year, and that means salad dressings for people who can't eat their fresh veg unless it's smothered in vinegar and mayonnaise. Personally, I eat my salads naked, and also without dressing. I will make that joke every time the opportunity comes up. I regret nothing. Well, nothing about that. Anyway, this is Cross and Blackwell's reduced calorie dressing, which they've given the extremely practical name of Waistline. As if to say, we all know why you're eating this instead of full-on Thousand Island, let's not kid ourselves. It's a very boilerplate, here's why this is the best choice, go out and buy it now sort of thing, really. Meanwhile, it might interest you to know that excellence need not be the enemy of value. Seems to be quite a complicated thought for a single kanji, but I think, and I'm almost certainly wrong, but that looks like a stylisation of the kanji for seasons. So there you go. Please correct me in the comments. I'm pretty sure Toyota Europe is trying to do some kind of inscrutable Far Eastern thing to impress the whites, rather than say anything specific. It's a Toyota Corolla anyway, and the point is that the luxury extras like power steering and a multi-valve engine and wheels are all actually included in the package, so isn't that nice? Over the page, a confusing banking advert. Banks tended to close at 3:30, see, but the TSB doesn't. It closes at 4. Whoop-de-doo. Oh, and 6 on Thursdays and Fridays. This is increasingly an artefact of a distant past, of course, because we've had 24-hour banking for years, including in 1990 via First Direct and other phone banks. And of course now the internet has made time irrelevant, along with high street banking in general. I live in a small town that used to have 5 or 6. Now we have 1, which is closing within the year. And there's only about 6 different banks in the country by now anyway. Halifax just died, and TSB, of course, has now died twice. This year is the original, before Lloyd swallowed them up and were forced to spit them out again, whereupon the new version made one too many catastrophic mistakes and sold itself to Santander with its tail between its legs. A few pages later, another car. This one's more dramatic, as you might expect from being twice the size and in colour. In a post-apocalyptic landscape of failed estates, the Nissan, stands tall. The Prairie does date all the way back to the days of Datsun, though, and lasted until 1998. What's more, this advert's not wrong. It really was the future of this kind of car. It's being marketed as an estate car here, but by the time the name was scrapped, this sort of thing would be known as a small multi-purpose vehicle. The last point of dignity before it becomes a full-on SUV, and you have to start asking yourself hard questions. The Prairie, arriving for the first time in 1981 and reaching Europe in 1982, was one of, if not the first, of these. Japanese innovation. One more car advert and it's a heavy contrast with the other two. See? The seat Marbella. Never mind the quality, feel the savings. Admittedly, Toyota are all about that as well, with the free extras, but at least they acted classy about it. This is just bellowing at you like you're in a used car lot. Free insurance, free no-claims bonus, free AA membership, free seat covers. Also, it goes. Probably. I expect. And yes, I know it's really pronounced Sayat. Delete that comment. More banking. Quick before the recession takes hold, get a mortgage from the Abbey National. They've helpfully left their entire advert blank except for the important part. Ostensibly as a sort of jigsaw puzzle metaphor, but really just as a quick and easy way to grab your attention. This next one's not only specifically 1990, but it's specifically this instant in 1990. It was obsolete almost as soon as it was published. Satellite television. Everyone's getting it, except that they're not because it's expensive and no one wants to pay that kind of money for Derek Jameson and Small Wonder. Or whatever's on BSB, no one really knows because Sky are monopolising the talk. But here's an advert for a square reel anyway. In June 1990. It's kind of poignant in a way. Get it now before BSB die in another 4.5 months. It does say, or at least imply, that it also receives Astra transmissions, so that's handy because they're going to be the only ones soon. What might look kind of odd is that it comes from Nokia, or rather ITT Nokia, the European Technology Group. They weren't always so laser-focused on mobile phones and the like that their slogan was connecting people. Mind you, that was a long time ago as well. Remember the Engage? Yeah, that's why. Sweetness next. Hermesitus. Going for a sort of late 80s sophistopop aesthetic, vaguely. Shame it's the 90s now. Part of that, I assume, is the headline being in all lowercase. But that just throws the whole thing off because it looks so obviously and visibly wrong. Especially with the slogan line at the bottom being in the exact same style, but using correct punctuation. It's like it throws off the aesthetic balance in some kind of way. It's really kind of weird. Notice also that it makes a point of how the product contains no saccharin. Watch the My Weekly episode, link in the description, assuming I remember to put it there, for a primer on the various kinds of sweetener. But basically, saccharin was the first, but not the best. By 1990, aspartame and sucralose also exist, and have the advantage of not tasting vaguely like metal. So we have situations like this, where saccharin is being actively insulted in order to sell alternatives. A couple of pages later, out comes Stanley, with a rather dramatic painted metaphor. Their knives are so good and sharp and whatever else that it practically makes you a living avatar for the blueprint of whatever it is you're trying to make. A table, a chair, a dead drug dealer. I tried decoding the bolded letters in the copy. Eventually I realised that read backwards it says, "Say it." I'm sure it was an important message for the right person. I'm just going to quickly call your attention to this one, because it's asking a question with a fairly obvious answer and doesn't seem to realise it. And again, in another 2 pages, a rebuttal to Cross and Blackwell from Kraft. It's a more impressive advert. Instead of wasting time on pleading copy, it uses an arresting and probably bloody annoying to set up image. More banking over the page, the National Gyro Bank in fact. Except not, because it was just inevitably privatised. So now it's Gyro Bank plc, soon to be a wholly owned subsidiary of the Alliance and Leicester once the paperwork's cleared. Which basically makes it the same as any other bank, except that you can deal with them from the post office. This advert's making a fundamental mistake as well. It's playing defence. A confident company would switch that headline over. People with other banks are a few pence short of a shilling. Note the use of old money terminology, by the way, since this bank is considered to be mostly used by old people. Anyway, the mistake continues into the copy as well. You probably think Gyro Bank customers are idiot dum-dums. Well, it is you that is the idiot dum-dum. It's meant to be a roundabout way to compliment their customers, but people don't read adverts in roundabout ways. You have to be direct, especially when you run the risk of actually insulting your base. Not that it matters, because as I said, it's just a brand name of the Alliance and Leicester now, or will be by the end of the year, and one they'll stop bothering with long before Santander buy them out. Next up, a stuff advert, albeit for an American marketing council, since that's where most of the world's peanuts come from, apart from the ones from China, India and Nigeria. So here's the British branch of the Peanut Council of America, based in Wigmore Street, London, trying desperately to convince you that peanut butter is good for your child. It's got iron and calcium and vitamins and dietary fibre and everything. Specifically, it's better than sugary old jam. That's really all this advert is saying, although it wants you to think in more general terms, and so it speaks that way. But its baseline for health is jam. Had it been a ham sandwich, or even cheese on toast, it may have struggled a bit more. Ah, more sport, good. That's supposed to be the theme. I think that horse has probably bolted, to be honest, but here it is anyway. No, it's not advertising the shoe. It's advertising Mysil Athlete's foot powders and creams. Delicious. Just in case you've got a mushroom farm growing on down there. The slogan puts the final nail in the coffin for this episode's theme by referencing tennis instead of football. Oh well, here's the last advert. To decaffeinate real coffee takes a day, and isn't even worth it. Alright, I'm actually being ungrateful. I had a low tolerance for caffeine as a kid. 1 can of Coke kept me up all night. So as a precaution I took everything without caffeine until puberty. Doesn't mean I had to like it though. But decaf was a bit on vogue in the late 80s and early 90s after a couple of minor health scares, and here lions are trying to convince you that they've got a secret ancient recipe that makes it taste the same. Chinny wreck on. To convince you, they're going all out on old-fashioned high-class imagery, with a rambling copy that I'm not going to go into in detail. This episode's long enough. But feel free to pause it and have a read. It's got some surprisingly interesting things about the history of coffee. And that's your lot. Not much of a World Cup special, really, but then it's not likely to be much of a World Cup. There is one more Italia 90 related article in this issue, actually. England were due to play Egypt that week, also on BBC One, but hey. So there's an interview with Egypt striker Hossam Hassan, which basically patronises both him and his country hard for 2 chortling pages. How hard? They made him wear a fez. On top of that, England won 1-0. The only game in that group to actually have a winner. Wasn't much of a World Cup then either. Hassan's due to return this year though, now as the Egypt manager. Good luck to him, especially getting out of the stadium without being spotted by ice. This has been a Bob the Fish production, one of dozens you can watch right now for free on bobthefish.org.uk. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell, and join us on patreon.com/applemask to support further productions and gain fabulous exclusive content, like my ongoing history of the BBC, your day's viewing on a random day in history, even a few exclusive mini video essays. Plus the satisfaction of knowing that thanks to you, I get to eat regular meals. bobthefish.org.uk. We care because you do.